The rain had been falling for hours, thick and relentless, turning the street into a slick, muddy mirror. The dog sat motionless by the old wooden fence, the world around him a blur of water and shadows. His fur, once soft and golden, was now matted with grime, his tail lying limp in the dirt, a silent echo of the wagging it used to be. His eyes, wide and searching, flicked to every car that passed, every human that walked by, hoping, praying for the one that wouldn't come. He had waited here before, in this very spot, on the very same cracked sidewalk, his gaze locked on the road where the family's car had disappeared weeks ago. The empty street was now as familiar as the hands that used to feed him, pet him, love him. But now, there was only silence, broken only by the occasional muffled sound of a passing car. In his heart, he still believed they would come back. They wouldn't just leave him, would they? The thought felt too painful to face. He wasn't sure how long he had been here. Days, maybe weeks. Time had blurred in the way it does when you're alone and waiting for something that may never come. But then, through the rain, a figure appeared in the distance. A woman. She was running, her face set in grim determination as she passed by the dog. For a moment their eyes locked. The woman's eyes, filled with something deeper than just pity, something he couldn't understand but recognized all the same. And then, she kept running, disappearing into the blur of the rain. The dog's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't stopped. She hadn't come for him. And yet, something inside him stirred, something that made him rise to his feet. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't done waiting. The dog's name was Charlie. He used to be a bright, energetic pup, chasing after balls in the yard, jumping up to lick his owner's face, and wagging his tail whenever he saw them. The family that had taken him in, his family. It had been a year ago when they had come to the shelter looking for a dog. His fur had been tangled and unkempt, his eyes wary and full of distrust. But they saw something in him, a spark, a need for love, and they chose him. For a while, life was perfect. Every morning, they woke him up with belly rubs, and every night they let him curl up on the couch, a warm body nestled against them as they watched TV. But then, things started to change. Slowly at first, they became quieter. Their voices, once filled with laughter, now grew tense and short. There were arguments, silent ones at first, then loud ones. Then, one day, they packed their things. The boxes came one after another, filled with the life they had built. And just like that, they were gone. But Charlie didn't understand. They promised they would come back. They always said, "We'll be right back, buddy. Just stay here for a little bit." Days turned into weeks, and still, they didn't come. Charlie sat by the door, waiting, his face pressed against the cold glass, staring out into the world that had once been so familiar. He could hear their voices in his dreams, calling him, telling him to be patient. But in the real world, there was only silence. The loneliness began to press against him like a weight, settling in the pit of his stomach. What had he done wrong? The days were long, and the nights even longer. Charlie's paws grew sore from pacing back and forth, but his hope remained unwavering, even as hunger began to gnaw at his insides. He still believed that one day, they would come for him. One evening, when the rain had subsided and the streets were damp and quiet, Charlie heard a noise. It was faint, but it made his heart race. The sound of a car engine, distant but unmistakable. He pressed his nose to the ground, sniffing the air. The scent was faint but familiar. It smelled like the car they used to drive, the one they had left in. His tail twitched, the first sign of life in days. He scrambled to his feet, his joints aching, his eyes wide with anticipation. He could feel the warmth of something stirring inside of him, something familiar, something that made him feel alive again. The car came into view, headlights cutting through the night. His heart pounded in his chest. Could it be them? Could this be the moment he had been waiting for? As the car drew closer, Charlie's eyes locked onto the figure behind the wheel. A woman. She didn't look like the ones who used to care for him, but still, there was something in her face, something in the way she moved, that made him believe she might be the one. She slowed the car as she passed by, stopping just a few feet ahead of him. Charlie's breath hitched in his throat, and for a moment, he stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The woman rolled down the window, and their eyes met. Charlie's tail twitched in nervous excitement, but she didn't stop. Instead, she gave him a quick, almost apologetic glance before driving away, disappearing into the rain-soaked night. Charlie stood there, motionless. His heart sank into his chest, and the familiar ache of abandonment crept back into his bones. But something inside him refused to give up. She had stopped. She had seen him. That was enough, wasn't it? Maybe, just maybe, someone would come for him after all. The following days were long, the rain relentless. But Charlie kept waiting. He didn't know why, but the image of that woman stayed with him. The way she had looked at him, how she had hesitated, how she had cared enough to pause. Maybe, he thought, she would come back. Maybe she could be the one to help him. And so, Charlie returned to his spot by the fence, his eyes scanning the street with the same intensity as before. His paws were sore, his body tired, but his spirit remained undeterred. Then, it happened again. The sound of an approaching car, but this time it was different. The car slowed as it reached him, and this time it stopped. The woman stepped out, looking down at him with a soft smile. Charlie didn't hesitate. He ran to her, his paws slipping on the wet pavement as he reached her side. She crouched down, her hands gentle as they brushed through his fur. For the first time in weeks, Charlie felt something other than hunger or loneliness. He felt warmth. The woman, who he didn't even know, was holding him, petting him, offering him the kindness he had longed for. "I'm not leaving you, buddy," she whispered, her voice soft but steady. Not this time. The woman, whose name was Maria, took Charlie into her home. She wasn't sure what had drawn her to the abandoned dog on the side of the road. Perhaps it was the way he looked at her, the way his eyes begged for something more than just food. She had seen that look before in her own life, when she had felt alone and forgotten. For Charlie, the first few days in Maria's home were overwhelming. He had spent so much time alone, so much time waiting for something that would never come, that it took him a while to trust again. But Maria was patient. She didn't push him. She let him come to her in his own time. She gave him space, food, and the comfort of a warm bed. Slowly, as the days passed, Charlie's spirit began to return. His eyes, once dull and full of sadness, began to brighten. He began to wag his tail again, a little at first, then more and more as he got used to the rhythm of life with Maria. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of fear, still traces of the abandonment he had endured. But there was also something new hope. For the first time in so long, Charlie felt safe. He felt wanted. He wasn't alone anymore. The sun broke through the clouds on a warm afternoon, casting a soft glow over the quiet street. Maria stood by the door watching as Charlie played in the yard, his tail wagging in joyous circles. He had come so far. From the cold, abandoned street to the warmth of her home, Charlie had grown. He had learned to trust again, to love again. Maria knew there would always be scars from the past, but she also knew that those scars didn't define him. What defined him now was his resilience, his ability to heal, and his willingness to love, despite everything he had been through. Charlie looked back at her, his eyes filled with affection, and Maria couldn't help but smile. She had saved him, yes, but in a way, he had saved her too. He had taught her the power of patience, of kindness, of never giving up on something or someone, no matter how long it took. And as Charlie bounded toward her, tail wagging, Maria bent down to scoop him up, holding him close. They both knew in that moment that their journey together had only just begun. "You're home now," she whispered, and Charlie, content in her arms, let out a soft, happy sigh. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet moments of discovery. Each day with Charlie brought something new. A new sound he would recognize, a new smell he would follow, a new way he would curl up beside Maria, as if he had always belonged there. Maria learned to speak Charlie's language, to understand his small gestures, his soft whines, and his sudden bursts of joy. They formed a bond that was built on the patience of healing, the language of shared silences, and the deep trust that only grew stronger as the days passed. One afternoon, Charlie was sprawled out on the living room rug, soaking up the sunlight that poured through the windows. His fur had become soft again, his eyes bright and alert. The dog that once waited for a family that had forgotten him now was a part of a new family, one that would never turn away from him. Maria looked at him from across the room, her heart full, though she had never fully understood the depth of what he had been through. Maria had her own scars, though hers were invisible, hidden beneath layers of busy schedules and tired smiles. She had been hurt, abandoned, betrayed by those she had loved. The emptiness she carried had often felt like it would swallow her whole. But Charlie had found her in a place where she hadn't even known she was waiting to be found. Just like him, she had been waiting for something to fill the gaps in her soul. The bond between them was unspoken but profound. Charlie didn't need to say anything. His presence was enough. When Maria would sit down to have coffee, Charlie would curl up at her feet, his head resting gently on her lap. It was as though they both knew what it meant to feel displaced, to feel like you didn't belong, and yet, to find that sense of belonging in the quiet comfort of each other's company. Then, one day, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset turn the sky into a canvas of gold and lavender, Maria thought of something that had been quietly brewing in the back of her mind since she first found Charlie. She couldn't let him stay with her alone. She needed to give him more. She needed him to feel truly home, to feel that the world was bigger than the narrow, lonely life he had known before. "Charlie," she whispered, her fingers gently brushing through his soft fur. "There's more out there for you. More than just this porch, more than just this home. You deserve to see the world outside of this little yard." Charlie lifted his head at the sound of her voice, looking up at her with eyes that seemed to understand more than he let on. The way he held his gaze, steady and calm, felt like a promise. A promise that whatever came next, they would face it together. Maria had been thinking about adopting another dog for a while now. She had always felt that Charlie needed a companion, a fellow traveler to share the adventures of life with. She could already see it. The two of them running through the fields, exploring new places, comforting each other in the moments when the world felt too overwhelming. The decision was made one night as Maria sat by the window, her laptop open, searching for a rescue center. She found a few dogs that caught her eye, but none quite like the one she found at the very end of the list, a shy, gentle dog named Milo. He had been rescued from an abusive home, and though he was still learning to trust humans, there was something in his eyes that reminded Maria of Charlie, a certain vulnerability, a certain longing to feel safe. She sent an email to the rescue center that night. The response came the following morning, and just like that, the plan was set in motion. They would bring Milo home. Maria couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had learned the importance of patience and trust in her bond with Charlie. She knew it would take time for Milo to adjust, just as it had taken time for Charlie to find his place in her world. The day they brought Milo home was a soft, sunny morning. Maria drove with Charlie in the passenger seat, his eyes wide and curious as they made their way to the rescue center. When they arrived, Charlie's ears perked up, his nose twitching as he stepped out of the car. He seemed to understand that something was different today. This wasn't just another errand. It was something bigger. As they walked through the shelter's gate, Maria's heart fluttered in anticipation. She had met Milo once before, but now she would see him in this new chapter of his life. When the door opened, there he was, a medium-sized dog with soft brown fur and soulful eyes. Milo hesitated at first, his body tense, unsure of this new environment. But when Charlie walked over to him, his tail wagging in gentle greeting, Milo softened. He stepped closer, cautiously sniffing Charlie's fur, before they both stood still, as if sharing a moment of silent understanding. Maria crouched down next to Milo, gently running her hand over his back. "Welcome home, Milo," she whispered. "You're safe now?" In the weeks that followed, Charlie became a teacher of sorts to Milo. He showed him the way to the backyard, where they would chase after tennis balls together. He showed him where the water bowls were and how to curl up on the couch without feeling afraid. Charlie, who had once been lost and afraid himself, now took on the role of protector. He was patient, letting Milo take the lead, but always there when he needed him. And slowly, like Charlie, Milo began to trust. He began to understand that not every human was a threat. Not every space was unsafe. And most importantly, he learned that there was room for him in Maria's world. Room for him to be loved, to be a part of something bigger than himself. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, Maria sat on the porch with both dogs beside her. Charlie's head rested on her lap, while Milo lay on the floor beside her, his body relaxed, no longer tense with fear. The air was cool, the evening breeze carrying the scent of fresh grass. Maria smiled softly, her heart full as she looked down at the two dogs. They had both found a home in her heart, and together they had found something even greater, a sense of peace, a sense of belonging. In that moment, Maria realized that the love they shared was more than just a bond between humans and animals. It was a promise that no matter the past, no matter the pain they had endured, they would face the future together, as a family. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky above, Maria whispered, "You're home, Milo, and you always will be." And in that quiet moment, as the world around them fell into peaceful slumber, she knew that the story of their healing was just beginning. Months passed, and with each passing day the family grew stronger. Maria, Charlie, and Milo had found a rhythm together. The simple act of waking up in the morning with Charlie's warm body curled beside her, the sound of Milo's paws tapping across the floor as he followed her around, the quiet moments they shared in the evenings, their bodies relaxed in the warmth of their home. Life, in its quiet beauty, had become something Maria never expected. She had come to understand that healing wasn't just about the past being forgotten, but about moving forward despite it, embracing the wounds as a part of who they were. But even in the peace they had created, there was an undeniable tension, the weight of something unsaid, something yet to be faced. Maria had been carrying it for a while, this quiet worry that seemed to sit in the corners of her mind. She had seen the changes in Charlie over the past few months. His health had improved, his fur thickened, and his once dull eyes were now bright and full of life. He was happy, but there was an emptiness that lingered in his gaze when he looked outside, when he sat by the window and stared out into the world beyond the safety of their home. Maria knew that Charlie still remembered the road he had once waited on, the streets he had paced back and forth. She could see it in the way he tensed when they drove near the old neighborhood, the way his ears perked up when he heard a familiar voice in the distance. She knew that Charlie, for all the love he had found in her, still had something unresolved, something he had never been able to shake. He had been left once, and it had left a mark on him that couldn't be erased by just love. It wasn't that he didn't feel safe with her. He did. He felt cherished, cared for, and loved. But somewhere deep inside, Maria understood that Charlie needed more. He needed closure. He needed to understand that what he had lost couldn't be undone, that it wasn't his fault. And in turn, he needed to let go. One evening, after dinner, Maria sat on the couch, her hands trembling slightly as she stroked Charlie's fur. He was resting beside her, his head in her lap as usual, but his eyes were distant, as though he was still searching for something. Milo lay quietly at their feet, his body sprawled across the floor, content and at peace. But Maria couldn't ignore the ache in Charlie's heart any longer. It was time for him to face the ghosts of his past. "Charlie," she whispered softly, her voice a comforting murmur in the quiet of the room. "I know you still think about them, about the family that left you, but it's time to let go, my love. You don't need to wait for them anymore." Charlie lifted his head at the sound of her voice, his eyes searching her face, as if he understood every word she said. His tail wagged faintly, but there was still that lingering sadness in his gaze. The silent question that he had carried for so long. Why? Maria swallowed the lump in her throat, tears threatening to spill, but she held them back. She wasn't going to cry now, not when she had a chance to heal him further. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I know you've been waiting for them to come back, but I need you to understand something, Charlie. You are not abandoned anymore. You are home, with me, with Milo, and no matter what happened in the past, you're not alone anymore." Charlie pressed his head against her chest, his breathing slow and steady. His body seemed to relax, but there was still a faint tremor in his muscles, a quiet reflection of the battle that raged inside him. Maria closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the moment. She wanted him to know, in the deepest part of his soul, that she had chosen him, that she would always choose him, no matter the past, no matter the pain. But she also knew that he needed to be ready to leave behind the shadows of his old life, to embrace the love they shared without the haunting thought of abandonment that followed him like a shadow. In the quiet, Maria felt a flicker of understanding between them, a silent agreement, a promise made in the space between her words and his presence. It was time for both of them to let go of the pain that had clung to their lives for so long. It was time for Charlie to move forward, to heal fully, and to embrace the new life that Maria had given him, the one that would never leave him. The weeks after that night felt different, lighter, somehow. Charlie no longer stared out the window, waiting for the family that had once left him. He no longer lingered by the door, as though expecting someone to come back for him. There was a new lightness in his step, a new joy that filled the corners of their home. And as for Maria, she had found peace in knowing that she had done what was necessary for Charlie's healing. She had given him the space to grieve, to feel what he needed to feel, and she had helped him release the hurt that had followed him for so long. But even in their peace, life had a way of testing them. One sunny afternoon, Charlie and Milo were outside in the backyard, running in circles as Maria sat on the porch, watching them play. She had just finished watering the plants and was enjoying the warmth of the sun when a familiar car pulled up in front of her house. Her heart skipped a beat. The car that pulled into her driveway was one Maria recognized all too well. It was the same one that had driven away from the shelter that day, the same one that had taken Charlie from her, the same one that had left him behind. Her breath caught in her throat, and she stood up, her eyes trained on the car. As it came to a stop, the driver's door opened, and out stepped a familiar face. A woman, mid-30s, dressed in business attire. It was her, the woman who had once been Charlie's owner. Maria's heart raced. She didn't know what to expect. What did this mean? Why had she come now? The woman walked toward her, her face serious, yet there was something in her eyes. Something familiar, something regretful. "Excuse me," the woman said softly, her voice hesitant. "Is this where Charlie is?" Maria stood still for a moment, unsure of how to respond. Charlie, sensing her hesitation, walked toward the woman. His ears slightly perked as he regarded her with quiet curiosity. For a long moment he stood there, his eyes locked with hers. The woman's face softened. "I didn't want to leave him, but things got hard. I couldn't take care of him. I didn't know what to do." Maria's heart clenched in her chest. She could see the pain in the woman's eyes, but she also knew that Charlie had moved on. He was no longer the dog who had been abandoned on the side of the road. He was someone's beloved pet, someone's family, and he had found his place with Maria. Charlie took a few cautious steps forward, his tail wagging softly. The woman knelt down, and for the briefest moment their eyes met. Then, as if sensing what needed to happen, Charlie turned away from her, walking back to Maria's side. He sat down next to her, his body pressed against hers in quiet solidarity. Maria took a deep breath, her voice steady as she spoke. "He's found a home now, a real home. He's safe here with us." The woman nodded, her lips trembling. "I know, I can see that now. I wanted to say goodbye. I wanted him to know that I didn't forget him." Charlie gave one last look back, as if he understood, before turning his gaze toward the future. The future he would now face alongside Maria, a future full of love, hope, and a home that would never leave him again. As the woman walked away, Charlie sat down beside Maria once more, his head resting on her lap. Together they watched the sunset, the sky painted in soft hues of pink and orange, and Charlie, for the first time in a long time, felt truly, completely home. In that moment, Maria knew there was nothing left to wait for. Charlie was exactly where he was meant to be, and together they would face whatever came next. As a family, forever. As the sun began to dip beneath the horizon, casting a soft golden glow over the quiet home, Maria sat on the porch, Charlie and Milo resting by her side. The calm of the evening wrapped around them like a blanket, the rustling of the leaves in the gentle breeze the only sound breaking the silence. Charlie, once a dog abandoned on the side of the road, was now at peace, nestled into the arms of the woman who had made him her family. It had taken time, but Maria had learned to understand Charlie's pain, his fear, and his lingering hope that he would one day be reunited with the family that had left him behind. For months, he had waited days, weeks, and even months in that same spot by the window, his body aching, his heart heavy with the loss. But Maria had never wavered. She had given him space to heal, to learn to trust again, and over time he had. Maria had always known that healing wasn't linear. It wasn't something that could be fixed with a few kind words or a gentle touch. It was a process, one that demanded patience and understanding. And as she sat there now, with both of her dogs by her side, she realized that healing wasn't just about getting better. It was about learning to live again, to move forward, even when the past still clung to the edges of your soul. The day the woman had arrived, the one who had once owned Charlie, Maria had known it was coming. There was no doubt that Charlie had a history before him, a past that couldn't be erased, no matter how much love he received. And while that woman had come to apologize, to say goodbye, Maria knew it wasn't just for Charlie's benefit. It was for her too, to acknowledge that she had made a mistake, that she had let go of him when he needed her the most. But Charlie, in that moment, had chosen to walk away from her. He had found his peace in Maria's arms, in the life they had built together. Charlie's eyes had met the woman's, and for a moment, it was as if the weight of the past hung between them. But then, Charlie had turned his back on the woman and walked back to Maria. It was as if he was saying goodbye to the past, to the life he had once known, and embracing the future, the life that was finally his. Maria held him close, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, the warmth of his fur against her skin. She had seen the transformation in him over the months. He had gone from the broken dog, who had once waited for a family, to the joyful, playful companion who now ran through the yard with Milo by his side. He had found his place, his home, and most importantly, he had found his peace. The woman had left quietly, her footsteps soft on the gravel driveway as she disappeared into the night. Maria had no animosity toward her. She understood that people made mistakes. She understood that life wasn't always as simple as it seemed. But what mattered now was Charlie's happiness. What mattered was the love they had built together. As the sky darkened and the first stars began to twinkle overhead, Maria leaned back in her chair, a soft smile on her face as she watched her two dogs, Charlie and Milo, playing in the yard. The world around them seemed to hold its breath, the noise of the outside world distant and faint. Here, in this quiet corner of the world, they had found each other. A bond had been formed, one that no one could break. Charlie looked up at Maria, his eyes soft, trusting. He didn't need to say anything. His gaze, his presence was enough. In that moment, Maria knew that he was home, not just physically, but in every sense. He had finally found the love, the safety, and the security he had been searching for. And in return, he had given Maria something she never expected: a lesson in patience, in love, in the beauty of second chances. "Welcome home, Charlie," Maria whispered, her voice soft, barely more than a breath. Charlie's tail wagged slowly in response, and he trotted over to her, sitting at her feet. Milo joined him, and the three of them sat together, watching the night settle around them. The world outside may have been uncertain, but in this moment, there was nothing but peace. No more waiting, no more longing. Just the quiet hum of a family that had found each other despite the odds. It was a bond forged not in perfection, but in love, in understanding, and in the unspoken promise that they would never be alone again. And as Maria looked out at the stars above, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. The road had been long, and the journey had been painful at times, but in the end, they had all found their way together. The night stretched on, calm and still, the only sounds the occasional rustling of the leaves and the soft breathing of the dogs by her side. And for the first time in a long time, Maria felt that everything was exactly as it should be. The pain of the past had faded into the distance, replaced by the warmth of the present. And Charlie, The dog who had once been lost had finally found his home. And so, as the darkness wrapped around them, Maria knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where love, healing, and peace would always be their guide. The past was behind them, and the future was theirs to shape, together, always.